Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and I'm the streamer, and we work on Django apps here. And I'm going to continue on that path tonight. We're going to work on my homeschool app, and tonight we're going to work on some customer requests. If you need a reminder, my customer is my spouse, so she's looked at the app some more and has a few new use cases that she's found. So we're going to start with those. If we get through them, then we will continue on to some of the onboarding stuff that I had last time, and that's the plan. So let's dig into it. What did she ask for? So some of this is like fit and finish, polish stuff on the application as she's been using it. Things that would be nice little usability features to make her life easier, and that's the goal here, because ultimately we want to make this useful for more than just her, because I would like to turn around and make it available to other homeschool families. So I'll show you what she was talking about, and we'll dig into the code and get going. If you've never joined before, this is about building a homeschool application. It helps my family with their scheduling for the school year, and the goal is to turn it into a product long term. And it's all built on Django. So I guess before I get into that, there's tons of ways you can keep up with me. I've got a website linked up above, and you can join mailing lists there. IoT, no, it's not IoT, Internet of Things. It's just a software as a service website. But you can keep up with me from some of the links that are there. I'm on Twitter as MB Lehman. If you're enjoying content and you want to support me financially, you're welcome to do that as well. I'm at patreon.com/MB Lehman. Thank you to my patrons of Rupert, Abdulaziz, Patrick, and Eric for your support. Appreciate it. And I guess they should also comment. There is a Discord link below, so if you have questions that fit into Django that you want to ask about, you're welcome to do that too. So I've started by firing up the trusty old web server here, and we'll take a look at the app and see where is the area that she is talking about. The first thing I need to do is sign out of, I was creating a test account for doing some stuff, so I don't have any data. So I need to get out of here and log in with my test account that has a lot more data that we can check out. So it's going to take a second and log in. And I think I have some dummy account named something like this with a password that I think I just typed wrong. Nope, I got it. Okay. So the comment is about the school year and the planning portion and such as that. So in this area, we have grade levels. This is my school year that I use as this test data, and there are grade levels and courses. And when you're on the course page, which is available here, this is clickable, and this second grade label is not. So what my wife is requesting is that this becomes a clickable thing, and then it takes you to jumps back to the school year page, but jumps to it like right here so that the grade level is highlighted. And that is going to give her the benefit of jumping back because she came in this way, and she can get out back to here. And so as she's working on her school year for planning, it's a good way to go up and down for planning for each of my kids. So we are going to make this go. And the way we're going to make it go is we're going to add an ID anchor tag that will be hidden. I'll probably put it, actually I might even put it right above here on the box, so that when she clicks it and returns to this spot, she'll get a view that's more like this. Because if I put it down on the second grade thing, what's going to happen is, because there's no padding, it would jump straight to this spot, which looks a little awkward. So what we'll do is we'll add an anchor tag that will be some kind of identifier that is just, it's going to be a hash, and then the grade level, and then the UUID of the grade level. And then we have all of that information. We have the UUID on this page, so we'll be able to go and link back to the school year page with the appropriate information. So that's the plan to start. It's going to be a bunch of template manipulation and so on. But I will pause and say, if you've got questions, you're welcome to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. That's really what I'm here for. We just happen to be working on this homeschool application as an outlet to see how Django can work. And it can show you along the way various things that you can do in HTML, Python, and all of the above. So let's dig into the template, and first we're going to prepare our destination, our school year, and actually have an anchor, and we'll try it out and make sure it works by handcrafting the URL. And then we will go to the actual course page and make the update there. Got a template over here, and we need to go to the school year detail template. That's the template that we really care about. And you can see it's got this if grade levels stuff, and then it iterates through. Is this the right area? Nope, it's down here. How do I? Oh, that's a good question. I think it's probably a different question from your approach, because as you just commented, you're learning to code, and so I've been coding now for well over a decade. So my approach and your approach might be quite different in terms of experience and what I'm just comfortable doing. I guess my question for you is, who is Baby Blue, is what's your goal? What are you trying to make? So I'd probably start from there. And if you're really new to coding, you probably need to get a little bit of experience with a language first. I happen to use Python. I think is a great programming language, that's where I'd go from first. Is get a handle on a language to use, and get some experience with it. So there's a couple ways to go about that. I have run a book club, so I also happen to be the organizer for my local Python meetup here in Frederick, Maryland, where I live. And one of the things that I've done is run a book club for, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the book. That's not good. Python. Wow, that's really embarrassing. So I promise this popular book, and okay, got it now. Automate. I don't know why I said that brain fart. There's a popular book called Automate the Boring Stuff with Python, and it's free to read online. It's somewhere in here. The author has all of the chapters. Of course, you can pay for a copy. Yeah, so no problem. I'm in Frederick, Maryland, and I am the organizer there. So I think actually we have a website as well, pythonfrederick.org. And we've actually got some learning resources here. If you want to use this, you're welcome to. It's a little outdated, but there's some stuff here. And I think I've got some choices in here as well. But my suggestion to you is, the reason I'm suggesting this book is because it's a good primer for learning the Python programming language to start. And then what I think it does that does a great job is it goes into saying, here's some things you can do. Because in my experience, if you learn a programming language, but you learn it at this purely academic level, it doesn't stick, because as soon as you hit something hard, you're just like, well, this is lame. I'm not going to bother with this anymore. And you give up. That's what I've seen people do. But by having a real project, something you can actually do and get some benefit out of, it kind of keeps you going. So even if you do hit some kind of hurdle, then you've got a little bit of motivation to get over that hurdle, because you're like, oh man, I'll be able to do, working with spreadsheets or whatever your job might have. So that's what I would recommend. There are also, like, if you're into web development, maybe that's why you're visiting the stream. There are really good tutorials out there for learning different tools. I don't know how much past experience that they expect you to have with a programming language, though, but I can recommend a couple. There's, Django has its tutorial itself. So if we actually go to Django project, and down low, I'll get to your question in just a second. I haven't forgotten about you there. So I just want to wrap up the question that Who is Baby Blue is asking. So if you want to get into web development, Django is a really solid framework. I'm obviously very biased. I think it's because I've been using it for a long time, but I think it is very good. And they have a tutorial in here that you can follow along with. So you can install Django. They teach you how, and there's a tutorial that you can use that will walk you through the process of setting up your own website and seeing how all of that works. So it is maybe a bit more advanced. I'm not positive on that. It's been, again, my level of experience versus a brand new programmer are two very different things at this point. So I can't vouch for how it feels as a novice anymore. So another one you might want to try is Django Girls is a organization that is specifically geared towards women in working in tech, but they have a good tutorial as well that is not gender oriented, as far as I know. So there's a popular Django Girls tutorial that is another way to get into Django that might be approachable from a different angle. So a couple different options there for you. If you want to get into web development, you can try one of the big Django tutorials. If you want to just get into Python and get some kind of project, you can try Automate the Boring Stuff. It's a book. And then there's also tons of online materials as well. So that's what I would recommend. I wish you luck on that process. Download, getting to your question about multi-tenancy. I'm dealing with multi-tenancy by at the database level, and you're asking, do you know which one you will use? I guess you mean solution. So my chosen solution is to associate all of my data with a particular record type. So there's a user model that my user exists as, and the user is attached to a school record. I think I can actually bring up my model diagram so we can have this be a little more concrete. So here are all the models, the database models in my system. And if we go down to the bottom here, so here's the user. This is coming from Django, which is why it's got all these extra things attached to it for the auth system. And then I have a foreign key to the school, and everything tiers up to that school. Like if you're not part of that school, you can't access all the data. So school years, grade levels, classes, like courses, homework, all these concepts that go along with a school year and a school are all held together by going back up and saying, do you have access to even look at this school? So that's how I deal with multi-tenancy. Every user is given their own school. I don't have any because of what this application is doing, I don't have any long-term plans right now to have like multiple users attached to the same school. But in the event that scenario comes about, like maybe they're a common thing in homeschooling groups is having like kind of homeschool coalitions where a bunch of people get together and kind of share some classes but do a lot of their own homeschool and stuff. I don't have any plan to do that right now, but if I did, I'd probably hang it off of this school model as well. So it's more implemented at the database level logically. There is another school of thought that says like separate your databases entirely so that what your users see can never even have a possibility of seeing somebody else's data. That's not the approach I'm taking. So that was my chosen solution. There are lots of patterns out there. They have their pros and cons. For my use case, I think this works well for me. Hope that answers some of your question. Okay, so we're going to get back to this this thing that we want to add, and I said that we wanted to add a new anchor tag right above that gray box, and the purpose of that is so that we can link directly to it. So you can see I've got the box right here. You can tell because it's background gray 100, and it's a div, and it's just a container that's like a flex box or something that's holding other stuff. And it's got some padding and margin on it. So what I want to do is add a new anchor here. And I think, I want to say you use, what is it, ID to do an anchor tag? Man, now I'm blanking out. That seems right. If I'm wrong, we'll find out very quickly. And so the anchor tag is going to be ID, and we'll say, what will we say? We'll have to give it a name, so we'll give it a grade level is the prefix that I'm going to use on this, and then we'll give it the UUID following that. And this will create a unique identifier above each grade level that we can hook onto. And we'll be able to pull that out and try it and see if it actually works as we hope it would. So add the ID there and then close off the anchor tag. And I'm not going to put any content in there. I don't want it to be in there. The other thing I'm not sure is it going to add extra space to it because it's a new element that is might have block scope. Whoops. Forgot to restart the server. Okay, so it didn't seem to take up any extra space. It's just kind of hidden in there with sizeless because it has no text, which is good. So if we inspect around that area, we're going to come up on, well, I guess we're not even close enough. Let's go to the grade level box that we're talking about. And you can see there's this hidden, you can't see it because it's got no text, but there is this anchor tag that has this ID attribute. So we should be able to take this value and come up to our URL here, put a hash sign, and put in the ID. And by doing that, if I hit enter here, it did exactly what I would hope it would do. It took me right to the grade level. In fact, it did it right at the top of the gray box, which is pretty good. I think the only way I might have liked it a little bit better is if it had a tiny amount of white space to kind of let it breathe, but I'm not gonna belabor this point. So I think that's close enough for what my my spouse needs. And it's also not looking like the other options. Like I said, we could have put it here right next to grade level and it would have looked like this, which I think really looks pretty junky. So we've got our place to go. And now I've confirmed as well that this is the proper ID that we can go to. So now we need to go to the course side of this, where the actual extra page is, which is, as a reminder, is over here. And we need to turn this into a link and then make it a link to the right place. So let's go do that. So we'll go to the template and we will go to the course detail page. That's where this is. And we'll see here that this is going to be, there's actually an extra complication here. Because here's the school year, and here is the grade level, and they can be separate. That seems kind of weird to me. I'm thinking back to my logic to see if this makes sense. So we might need to go check out the view to see if this is even a possible state. Because here's my fear. My fear is that if we add this link here, oh, this even gets messier than I forgot. I forgot about some of this stuff. All right, so there's layers to this, which I guess makes it really interesting. We have this grade levels attribute, and it's actually a list of grade levels. And the reason it's a list is because a course can be shared across multiple grade levels. It's how I modeled it, because in my home, there are sometimes courses that both of my kids, my kids are pretty close in age, both of my kids will take at the same time. And rather than having my wife duplicate that course, she asked if I could make it so that they could be shared together, which means that this is getting a little bit harder than I initially anticipated. Still not impossible, but harder. All right, so let's go back and check on two things. And the reason I need to check on something is like, we need the school year detail page. So we need the URL to be this thing right here. The only difference is that we need to tack on to the end of it, the grade levels thing that I showed you. So this, unfortunately, that means that this join template tag is going to have to go away. It's not going to work. We're going to have a loop on this stuff. Yeah, and that's just the reality. Okay, so first let's go to the course view and make sure that the school year will always be present when the grade level is present. I'm not sure that that's the case. We need to check on that. So we've got the course detail view. Here is the context. Okay, so I think this is confirmation right here that if there are grade levels, there will also be a school year, because the grade level, the school year is populated from the grade levels. So this is actually, it's okay to use school year inside of this if statement. A little strange, and it might seem a little like, why is that? But I think it's going to work. So we'll have the grade levels, and then we'll be able to loop over them. So I'm actually going to bring up a different course. I want to bring up one that is actually representative of both, so you can see the double thing here that we have to deal with, the kind of corner case of this. And then that will be more, just an easier thing to see. I think the science one was 2. Yeah, here we go. So here's a test course that I made. You can see like it's full of junk tasks. I was just using it as a place to do it. But here up at the top, you can see that it's got both second grade and kindergarten. And that's what we need to have a link that'll go to second grade and another link that'll go to kindergarten. We do have the benefit of knowing that the grade levels, that a course cannot be split across different school years. So even though it's only pulling a school year from one grade level, it'll apply for both. That's an important attribute here. So we'll go into this if grade level stuff. We'll close out that view file, and we need to switch to a for loop, because as I said, this template tag with the join is not going to work anymore. So let's do that. Let's switch to, we'll say for grade level in grade levels. The first thing, before you even add the link, the first thing I'm going to do is change and just recreate the bit that is here, or sorry, the bit that's right here, without using the template join tag. That's step 1, to make sure that I don't regress the existing functionality, because I think we'll see that it'll be quite possible to do that. So we have, we'll say grade level, and that will print out the string representation of the grade level. And then there's a way to get access to the last, we want to add a comma after the grade level if the grade level is not the last one. So if there's 2, I want a comma space between them. So it's if, I think it's for loop. It's like the special key. Is that right? I'll answer a question in just a second. Who's Baby Blue? I'm gonna wrap up this before I break my brain here. But let me think about that question too. Yep, for loop. So we want to add the comma space thing only if it's not the last loop. So this is a special thing that exists in a Django template here, that is this. If you're inside a for loop template tag, you get this extra variable added, this thing called for loop, which has a bunch of attributes on it. One of them is the last. And so we're going to add a comma space here and then put an end if on it. Oh, you're welcome down low. So I'm going to save this as is for just a second. And what we should see, if I go back and refresh the browser, is this twice, because I'm actually leaving both in here. Yep, so we see second grade kindergarten, there's our for loop, and we see second grade kindergarten, the same as the join. So between the two, if I had to pick one, if I didn't have to do a link, this was definitely the right call. Just doing a join, it was a lot simpler. I didn't have to do any looping, and it just made it nice and clean. But we're about to move to a more complex functionality, so we need to get a little bit more complex in our handling. Getting back to your question, who is Baby Blue? JS and Python, which is easier? Well, it's probably a big industry debate, and I am biased. Again, as someone who organizes Python, I personally feel that Python is easier to get into. The advantages of let's give JavaScript credit where it's due. Like, the advantage of JavaScript is you already have a browser, and so the fact that your browser already uses JavaScript means that out of the box, for learning some basic JavaScript, like if you're just learning how to do JavaScript programming, JavaScript is already there, and That is one advantage. I don't think that that advantage goes very far because I find that it's pretty easy to get Python installed these days. So once you do have Python installed, then a lot of that advantage evaporates. And then from that point, I personally find that Python has fewer oddities, fewer quirks than JavaScript. JavaScript, you have to understand, was a language that was literally designed in 13 days, I think, like for the first version. I mean, there's a lot of improvements since then, don't get me wrong. But the creator of JavaScript, a gentleman named Brendan Eich, 10 days? I don't know. There's some absurdly, yeah. The company that he worked for asked for an implementation of a language in a ludicrously short amount of time. And considering that this is the time frame that Brendan had for creating JavaScript, he did an amazing job. I'm not going to fault him for that. But it does mean that there are certain things that got into the language that's like, whoa, why is this here? Which I think just means that JavaScript is a little bit, it's got some funky spots. I'm not saying Python is perfect, but I just find Python a little friendlier to use. It has a very clean syntax and is pretty approachable. And I think there's a lot of good stuff. And another thing that I would put in Python's favor is that Python is very broadly used in a wide variety of industries. So if you wanted to get into web development, certainly can do that. If you want to get into data science and scientific pursuits, Python is the go-to tool for a lot of that stuff. If you want to get into artificial intelligence and machine learning and these really advanced topics, Python is the language that it gets used in a lot of those arenas as well. So Python is this really, really versatile language, which is why I prefer it. You can learn great stuff from either of them. There are other good resources for JavaScript. I'm trying to think if there's a popular one. There's some kind of online school that has a whole curriculum for JavaScript. I'm drawing a blank on the name. It's not Treehouse, although that Treehouse is a platform. But there's a free code camp. That sounds right. Free code camp. You might want to check out. Ooh, is this the right one? Okay, just their website's a little not quite what oh yeah, that's the symbol. Just nice and basic, I suppose. But they have a lot of good. I've heard a lot of good stuff about this this area, and they do a lot of JavaScript stuff. And as you can see, they actually have created a bunch of Python work as well. But it's more in the data science arena. So if you're like looking to get into web stuff, they'll have good resources for JavaScript that you could start with. So there's an option for you. Okay, getting back to the template. So we've now got I've deleted that for loop. So if I refresh, we've got both. That's good. And I think we have all of the bits of information that we need in order to link back to the right place. So let's do this. Let's add in, well, first we'll add in a hyperlink that goes nowhere. Hey, EzraFlow, welcome back. Good to see you again, or see you in the virtual sense, you know. We're working on some template stuff that I've got going. Requests from the missus about ways to make the site better. So I'm going to add a hyperlink, and the reason I'm adding this like one step at a time and refreshing is I'm not sure. Okay, I guess that's good. Like there's a hyperlink here, but I was slightly afraid that the hyperlink had a block and that it was going to like wrap second grade and kindergarten, but that seems unfounded, thankfully. So we've got grade level, and the next thing we can do is actually I'm just going to steal right from this guy. I'm going to take this chunk and I'm going to put it into here, and I'm going to leave that hash mark, and now we're going to add, this is where I'm going to connect the dots from the previous area and say grade level and grade level, and it takes a UUID. Now what is a UUID? Some of you, I mean, who is Baby Blue is, you definitely have said you're new, so you're probably like, what the heck is what is that? A UUID stands for a universally unique identifier. It's a big fancy word to say this really long set of numbers and letters here. And it's just a way to give every piece of data in my system something unique to go on. And so now if I hover over this link, which actually I need to add, let's do one last change here. We need to add a class to the end of this to make sure that the underline appears. I'm going to add class equal hover underline, which I think should be the final change to make all this work. What? Come on now. Did I spell it wrong? Oh, forgot the E. So yes, I spelled it wrong. Okay. So if you look at the bottom of my browser now and look at the URL that is appearing because of this, unique identifiers are really long, kind of absurdly long strings of numbers and letters that go together. And so what I've done here is create a URL that says go back to the school year page, but also give it with the ID, the hash mark, to go straight to that grade level. Now, if I did everything right, it'll take us exactly to that spot that I just tested with a second ago that you saw. In fact, it'll look almost identical to this. Should look, yeah, like pixel for pixel. I might have not lined that up exactly, but I'm pretty darn close. And there you go. Yeah, I was off by a pixel, but you get the idea. It took us to where the spot we want to go. And now we can go back and do the same thing for kindergarten. And it's taking us to kindergarten. That's there. And then the other thing we can do is we can check on one of the cases where it doesn't have multiple classes. So let's go back to math here. We're on the math 2, and I click second grade, and it does that. All right, awesome. So I think we've done everything that I want to do for this particular issue. So we'll mark this one as complete. Well, first of all, let's commit the code. So I'm using version control and we're using git, and we can see the changes. And it turned out to be a pretty basic set of changes, assuming you had the requisite knowledge. We added an anchor tag above our little gray box that has a unique identifier that can point directly to the right grade level. And then we went into the course detail view, looped over everything, and added a link that takes us directly to that grade level. So we'll commit this and we'll say make grade level on course detail clickable. That's good enough. And this fixes number 257. All right, one down. My wife had another request, and this one is a printing one, and the printing ones are a little weird because, well, they're just weird. Thankfully, I think I've got a toolbox now of print stuff that I can explain how some of those aspects work. But I am going to switch from Firefox over to Chrome because I'm really, at this stage, I could ultimately make it work everywhere, but for whatever reason, printing is one of these oddities that there's more corner cases, and I just don't feel like getting all of the details down, knowing that my spouse, who is the only real user right now, is not using Firefox. And it's easier to do some debugging on Chrome because they actually do a better print preview. So we're going to go back to Chrome. I just realized that I need to make this smaller so you actually can see it, and then I can see the text chat. I'll try and log in here. I need to actually log in because the test account is not logged in for that user. And the request from my spouse was to go to the course task page, and she reported to me that this wasn't a page that initially she had asked to be printable. In previous versions, she wanted a view of the week view that's printable. So this is already designed. Like if I did the print on this, it would strip out the extra stuff. Same thing with the daily view, but not the course task list. So we're going to go to a course, and we'll just pick Math 2 because it's right here. And we'll do a print preview on it, and you'll see what's wrong with it. So print. And Chrome is going to show us the rendering. And it's not horrible, but it's not great either. And some of the areas that need to be fixed are the buttons. Like there's no reason to show these buttons if on a printout. It's not like you're going to do anything with them. And the same thing with these buttons. So if I can get rid of both of those, it might also, and this might even be zoomed out. No, it's at 100%. So what that'll do is, what is the layout right now? Layout needs to be in portrait. So you can see it's having a really detrimental effect to the tasks because all of these buttons are just making this spacing go crazy, and that looks really bad, and it's just a bunch of extra pages. So if my wife wanted to print this out, I mean, look, this is ludicrous. It would print out 23 pages, which is just nutty. So we're going to take out the buttons, and we're going to hide the side buttons as well because, again, it's a piece of paper, so she doesn't need to see that. So we'll come into this, and the way I did this, and this is probably good to know about if you have never dealt with it before, is there are different, what do they call them? CSS Media Queries, I believe is the right term. And a media query, you can see it from the base template here. See this end thing that says media, and media equals print? That is a signal to the web page that it's about to be printed, like the print preview you just saw. And so what I've got here is an extra style sheet that will only be used when we're in the media print mode. And here is that style sheet. So what I can do is, you can see what these CSS classes are called: print hide, print no color. You know, I can essentially turn some things off. And these are only going to go into effect on the print mode. So you can kind of immediately see where this is going, I hope. So if we go over to the course detail page and go to the print area, or just the area itself, and we say, come up to like this paragraph. So here's a paragraph, for example. And if I do print hide, and notice what these are. These are a paragraph surrounding all the buttons. So now we've got that. And if we return to, well, we're on the Chrome. Now if we do the print preview again, then, well, the buttons should have gone away. And maybe I didn't refresh it. That was probably it. Okay, great. So I refreshed the page this time. And you can see that print hide attribute has this really good quality of it took away the buttons. So those weren't needed. So the second thing that we're going to try is, this is each one of these rows is a flex box. And so what I think I'm going to do is, for the extra rows that we don't need to see, which is namely this set of buttons, and I think there might even be a hidden one for another course, or if you have course specific tasks. So yeah, maybe this example is not the greatest one. I think there's another one that might have course specific tasks, but I'm not sure which one it's going to be. All right, well, I'm not going to fret about that too much. So we'll stay here. This is fine. Make sure it still has the same problem of the wrapping. It does. So I'm going to hide this, and let's inspect the row, and you can see what it's composed of. Wow. Google is not being helpful here. So here is our row. So it's got the actual task. It's got another thing that I think is showing a course, which is not rendering. We'll see that in the template in a minute. And then it has the set of buttons at the end. So I think what I want to do to make this work is just hide this last area with the print hide attribute. And I think that should be enough to make the page do what we want it to. But it might be a little bit more complicated than that. Whoops, closed the wrong thing. It might be a little bit more complicated than that because there might be, well, we'll see. So here is the task description. And as I said, a task can be specific to a grade level. So that's what that second thing is for. I'm going to try and leave that in to make, and if it works with the flow layout, then I don't want to have to hide that one too. And then here is all of those buttons that we saw, the extra actions that aren't going to be useful. So I want to just go up to this div and come to the end and say print hide. And I think that might be it, which would be awesome. I'd love to make short work of some of these issues. We're going to refresh this page and then try and print it. See what it does. Oh yeah, look at that. So way better. It's still, something still is funky kind of going on here of, like, I think it's not quite as tight together as I'd like it to be. And I can't account for that exactly. I don't know what that's all about. Because look at how tight these are, which is, the print view is not being that nice. I don't know if it's a Tailwind thing. And yeah, because again, printing is like one of these areas that people just aren't printing as much anymore. So thinking about doing design for print, it has some weird stuff in there. So let's try one more thing. Let's actually try hiding that second one to see if it maybe is contributing. But if it's not, I'll just remove that. So let's refresh the page again and do one more print preview. All right, so apparently it was doing it. So something here was causing that problem. And now you can see this is nice. So that's down to 7 pages. This is for something that had a ton before. So it's much improved. So let's go back and see what it was. When I had the extra column, how many pages that was. I'm just curious now. So here it's spaced out. It's an extra 3 pages, which, you know, I don't want to be wasteful. Like, yeah, just don't want to be wasteful. So we'll leave that. And if at some point she comes back and says, like, hey, wait a minute, I need to see the ones that have that are meant for a specific grade, then we can come back and fix this. But I think that's going to be okay for now. Just show the task. All right, so that turned out to be perhaps a super easy issue. Yep, it was easy. We added print hide to the 3 spots that made those disappear, got rid of the buttons, and took something that was printing out at 23 pages down to 7. And just made it look nicer. So we'll say make the course detail page printable. And that fixes, I think it's 258. Yeah, 258. All right. Let me think about what to do next. So the 2 issues that I've worked on so far were really primarily about delighting my customer, delighting my spouse in this case. But I think that's just a general lesson. Like the advantage I have of being a very small project and a small team, and like if you were to take on a software as a service yourself, is that being a team of 1, where you're doing all these bits of work, often means that you're able to move way faster than other teams, especially other huge teams, because they might have very big processes. Like I can tell you my process at work to do what I just did, and like I'm about to deploy it in a second, and go that quickly is like, it's a hard capability to have that when you are working on a large team. So you can take that advantage of that, and you know, if you have actual customers and you're able to turn around and give them not only a response, but a solution, like same day, that's pretty, you're going to instill a lot of confidence, and I think your customers will be happy with you for that. So what I'm going to do is let this deploy. I'm going to push these changes out. And while that's going, so I'm deploying to Heroku. So it's just a make target that does a git push Heroku master, and Heroku is now going and doing everything else. We can talk about what's left. And to show that off, I will come over to the start. I need to hold on a second. I need to have a server running again. Turn this back on. So what I was working on last week was onboarding, and we worked on this last page, the last form. And in the intervening time, I said, the experience was kind of crummy at the end, because it walked you through this flow of here's everything that you need to do as a new user of this homeschool application to get all of your preliminary data. And then it dumped you at this place without giving you any notion of what's next. So I made some changes, and I said I was going to probably work on these after stream, and I did. And so here it is. I wanted to give some just guiding things to do, and along with some actions. So I have this at the end of the welcome. It will dump you to it's the same school year page that I said, was going to be not so good. But previously you would have been dumped to something like this, which is very informational and have all your data, but it wouldn't give you any notion of what's next. And so I added that, and I worked with my spouse and worked on some text about what would she want to do next if she were starting. And so we came up with these 3 different choose your own adventure kind of activities that you could do as a new user, and it kind of celebrates your success with going through onboarding, and it just kind of gives you a warm fuzzy feeling, I guess, at the end. That was the goal anyway. I don't know if I succeeded or not, but that was what I was trying to do with this whole image. But if we come back to the issues, I'm still not actually done with onboarding. There's still some polish that is needed. And I think I'll work on one more of these this evening and probably wrap up with what I'm doing today. But in my application flow and in that onboarding stuff, when people first start, they land here, and there's things that I'm trying to guide you to visually. There's a big green button at the bottom, so this is your call to action, is what they call it, so you know where to go and what to do. And then you have a clear path of these are the steps that you're going to be walking along in order to set up your school. But there's always going to be that category of person that wants to just go, what kind of reports do they have? I don't care about this onboarding stuff. Let me go here. And there needs to be, in the absence of data, on a new account, this data is not going to show anything. So you need to think about, and I've said this in the past, you need to think about the empty states of your application. In fact, let's switch back to, I don't actually remember the name that I used for that. Testing? App test? Shoot. We're going to have to go in through the admin to remember the account. I don't remember what email I used, so I don't remember what to log in as. So that was kind of silly of me. I should have waited 1 second. So give me a second. We'll get into an account that has basically no data in it, and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to look through my admin point of view and find the user app view. Okay. So let's return and log out. And we'll get to that user, and so you should be able to see it with no data in there. We'll log into the site, and we're going to log in as the app view at test.com. Hopefully I got all that correct. Okay, so here we are. And I'm going to pretend that I'm back in the onboarding flow. And so now we're at a user that has no data. Hey, Terrible Goss, welcome. Thanks for joining in. So we're at our onboarding flow here, And so as much as I might want to direct people's eyes to this button at the bottom and have them read text and see all these buttons of this is what you should be doing, there's always going to be this category of people that don't want to do that. And who knows, I might even be in that category. I do like to click around things. And like you can do usability testing, and what's crazy is that things that you might think are obvious as the designer, like I might perceive this as really obvious to me because your eye goes to the bottom and you read a button. But you know, those of you looking at this right now might be like, I don't know where to go next. And that's natural. That's the designing UI is really hard. There's an entire sub-genre of computer science known as HCI, human computer interface design, that thinks about these kind of things and what to do about it and how to like measure it. But it's a field of study, and it's tough work. But what you can be assured of is that you're going to have these people who just want to click around. And so they might see your stuff here and they get off the rails and go, yeah, no, I want to see what kind of reports are there. And so here's an example of, I've thought about this kind of person of, you don't have any reports yet. You don't have any data. So this is what I call an empty state kind of template, where there's something friendly, something to catch your eye, and something informative to tell you this is why you can't see anything here yet. And so what I need to do is, like, here's an example where I'm doing this poorly. I haven't fixed this yet. In fact, I don't even think I've written this yet. So let me add an issue right at this very moment to say, what do I want to say? Yeah, we need an empty state template for the students page. So these are the kinds of bits of polish that you want to have on your app, so that if somebody goes around and tries to just kick the tires on your application, you don't want it to feel unfinished. And this is one area that's a problem. The school year, this is probably also a problem. Good grief, how many of these spots do I have? I mean, and there's clearly an obvious call out here of what to do, but that's still not great. So let's say we're going to add empty state for the school years page. And I think there were a couple more of them. Do I already have the day marked? Nope, I don't. I promise I'm getting to the one that I actually have done something. Empty state for daily page. I'm just, as I'm going through these, I'm sort of cataloging like what's there. So getting back to here's where I actually have done something. So I thought about this. So the people are going to click around and they might click off the rails. And if you recall, well, actually, I think I can do no, I can't. I've got this logged in as a different account. I thought this was on a different page. But here we are in what I consider the app view. And the app view for the app, the primary view for the application, is this weekly point of view where you are seeing the schedule of your students for your school year all laid out for the current week that you're in, Monday through Friday. Now you can see that doesn't add up if you don't have a school year, if you don't have students, if the students aren't enrolled in that school year. So there's a bunch of pieces of information that need to be in place. Furthermore, like, I wanted to be able to guide people back to the onboarding flow if they haven't done that. So I decided to, that same banner that you saw on the start page, I dropped it here so that they could get back into onboarding. Like if they clicked out and they want to go back, they can do that. So I think what I want to do is I'll probably try and make, at least amongst these main 5 elements that exist, I probably won't mess with the settings page. I don't think that makes much sense. But for these ones that you might click on, which are naturally right above this onboarding banner, and might encourage you to go there, then I would like to let people get back on the path. And that's the goal. So I have there's like a couple of empty states that actually can happen. So as I mentioned, this weekly state has, you have to have a school year. If you don't have a school year, it doesn't do any good. You have to have a student. If you don't have a student, it doesn't do any good. I need to fill in like the data for those cases. And I started doing this one, like you can tell that this one is targeted at, there's no school year for this user yet because it's showing the call to action for creating a school year, which happens to be roughly the same thing as this. In fact, I copied pretty clearly from this and took out the form. But that is what I wanted to do to get people back on track. So what I want to do with the remainder of the time, I'm not going to stream super long today, but with the remainder of the time, let's focus on one of these. So we have our empty state for the app with no students. So there's another thing that we need to create. And this is actually one where I haven't, as you saw on the student page, when there's no students, there's nothing here yet. So we're going to design this one a little bit. And we'll put the template fragment in on the weekly view, and then we might even be able to recycle it here on the actual students page and just emblazon it down below the buttons as best we can. Yeah, there's stuff I'm recognizing, like there's all sorts of ways to get around that shouldn't be possible. Like that doesn't make sense. So let's come back to here. We'll use this. We'll check for students, and I think I've already done the testing for that. And we'll move along and check on the deploy. The deploy worked. Let's make sure it's still alive. Heroku, you can do Heroku open, which will take me right to the site. And everything, this came up and web server's live. So I'm pretty confident that that's still working. So I can now just tell my spouse that those features that I worked on tonight are already deployed. So great. So we're ready to work on the student view. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to the app HTML page. And you can see I've already got a lot of this prepped. So while I was offline, a couple of things I did is I added these new context variables. So here's one of has school years. And so what you're seeing right now on this page is there's no school years. So it's showing the banner and it's showing that the image and the call to action and the text. So we're going to do something very similar for the students. And so I guess in order to make this work, we can do, well, we'll cheat. We'll just delete the not for now. And it's going to fall into this area. So we'll see that in action. So it says hi because I just put that there. So the other thing I want to do is let's assume, and this isn't a correct assumption right now, but let's assume for the moment that this person has not completed onboarding. Because I do want to, we're going to have to make this a little bit smarter about when to show this banner, because it'll be possible to complete onboarding, and the last step of onboarding is the creation of a task, a course task, and yet still not have a student. So it may not make sense to show the start banner, even though it may make sense to show that what happens when you don't have any students. So we're going to fix up the copy here. We're going to go find an appropriate image to use for a student, and then we will link to the create student page. And I think that'll be enough to get going. So we've got this chunk. Let's refresh. It should look like the other one because it is. And we'll change the text here to say add student, because we're not creating a student. Well, eventually you create them, but at this stage in their life, you are adding them to your homeschool. And the student page is under, I think it's students create. Whoops, that'd be a colon. I think that should be the right thing. Try refreshing that. And so the Add Student button is taking you to the Add Student page. That's where you want to go. So the call to action is correct. And now we need to change the copy here. So we'll say, before you can view the week's schedule, you must first add a student. And I want to use, I haven't found a good way to do this, and I should just learn the character. Oh, come on. It's showing me the start. Okay. The quote character. So you can do a straight quote, but a designer is going to notice. So you want to do proper curved quotes. You don't have to, but it's something that the designers I've worked with have always been like, ew, straight quotes, prime marks is another name for them. You don't really want those in there. And there's a way that there's a keyboard shortcut I can't remember to get a curly quote directly from a Mac keyboard, but I never remember it. So I always end up copying it from somewhere else. Anyway, so before you can view the week's schedule, you must first add a student. So that's kind of the right message. And the other thing we want to check is, I want to check if I already have an appropriate icon. So let's go into our my projects directory and go to homeschool and static. So that's the one I just added. Celebrate. There's children. Maybe that's the best choice. We'll do a quick search in a minute, but I think it's probably going to be children or grade level. Either of those might work really well. So I get a lot of these images. I get all of these images from a resource that is pretty awesome. I'm no problem sharing this with y'all because it's free. It's great. Katerina Limpitsuni has this site called Undraw. It's got a search index on it, and you can search for stuff. And these are SVG graphics that you can customize their color and drop them in your own projects. And they don't require any attribution. It's just awesome. I mean, and that's not why it's awesome. It's awesome because they're well done and they're of high quality. It happens to be cool as well that you don't require attribution. You don't have to pay for them. I think it's just something that this person enjoys, as far as I can tell. And it's probably good for her professional career, I imagine. Anyway, so let's see what we can find for kids. If there's any like other image that I might want to use. I already have that for children. Okay. How about children? Maybe she doesn't do a lot of stuff that's kid related. So you can see I have two of these images already of this one, children, and true friends here. And these two of toy car and doll play they're too young, I think, for the demographic that I'm going for. What else could I type that might play? I don't know. There may not be a lot of choices for young people. And that's okay. I already have two decent ones, so that's fine. So let's use one of the ones that I already have. We've got, what did I say? We've got this one called grade level, and then children. Let's do children. That's fun. I invoking this emotion of children at play as you're creating a student, I think is good. So let's change this to, I already have it, so we can just change it to children. And I'm going to use the same alt tag of children playing. Let's check it out. See how it came out. Okay. And you got to remember too, is like these are elements that people may not see right away. Although I guess they might see the student one pretty frequently if they have never created a student before they get here, even though they've gone through onboarding. So I might update this copy later, but you can see that this does what we wanted it to. We get the message across of here's an empty state. You're not just left with, like, if let's imagine the case where we don't have this stuff, which is not hard to do. We can instead of using our imagination, we can see it. So I'm going to comment out all that stuff and then comment out the closing end if. If you don't have any data in the previous version of this, well, shoot. Okay, it's got stuff in the view that I forgot that I had commented out. You can just trust me that it didn't look good. It had something along the lines of, it would say week of such and such with some links over here, and there'd be a button, and then there'd just be this big white empty space, and you'd have no idea what it was for. So this is an example of replacing that bad experience with an experience that gives you some inkling of what to do next. You can either get back onto the onboarding flow, or you can go ahead and you can follow the call to action and create a student here. So you can kind of choose your own path. And to do that, it didn't take that much coding. It was some template work. It was, yeah, that was it. Like we changed the link, we changed the link text, we changed the image, and we changed the copy. Copy is just the words that go along with stuff. That's a design term. And I think that's it. But we'll say add empty state for week view with no students. And that's going to fix number, what number was that? 250. All right, so we're making progress on this onboarding goal, and it's getting closer to the end. We're down to just a handful of issues. And some of these are actually outside of the scope of onboarding technically, but it's kind of making sure that not only do I give people a clear path of what they should be doing when they start and how they should be finishing to have enough data to go, and that welcome thing that you saw, or that awesome congratulations thing that you saw that gave them a path of, we're not going to hold your hand anymore, but here are things you can go do next. That can help them as well. And then having informational messages along the way of, you don't have enough data here, here's what you need to do next, kind of not directly holding their hand, but just nudging them of, hey, you need to go create data here if you want to see the actual data that goes on this page. Those are things that I think all go into onboarding. There's tons of ways to make onboarding way more advanced if you wanted tours and all sorts of extra tracking. I'm not going to do that because I don't have enough customers giving me feedback to say, like, hey, your onboarding is insufficient or your onboarding is great. I just don't know either way. So I'm going to finish out the onboarding by finishing all of these empty states, kind of filling in the holes, and then we'll be able to move on to the next chunk of feature work. And I think with that, I'm going to stop for the evening. Thank you all for joining in. I do take this content and put it up on YouTube. If you want to enjoy, if you like what you see and you want to give me a follow here on Twitch, or you want to subscribe on YouTube, either of those would be awesome, as it helps me get seen by others, as they say. And thanks again. If you want to join the Discord and ask questions there, you're welcome to do so. There's a link down below my Twitch stream, and where it's got all of the information, you can join in and chat about Django or anything else. Thanks again for joining in, and take care. Have a good night.